Listen to the Vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. I'm very happy and very blessed to have Mr. Alan Whitman here with me. Bass player, man, he's played with JOE SATRIANI, Steve Lukather, and man, so many different ones. But we're going to get to know him and talk about his new music. Before we get into that, Alan, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Right. Well, I'm a boomer.
Hello, Boomer.
Yeah, I hear a lot about how people define boomers, and I think like, I don't really fit in. I didn't fit in then, and I don't fit in now. Well, okay, it's it's just a name. Now I live here on the east coast of the U.S. I got my family here with me, and I am also blessed with the family that I have, and I get to play a lot of music, and not live as much as I used to, but that's cool. Recently discovered Logic, and I just flipped out. And I spent two years just going nuts, just doing whatever I want to. I listen back on it now and kind of go, okay, that's a learning curve, but what a gas. So to be my age and to be getting back into music in such a deep way, it's kind of like I wish I knew then, kind of thing. When you have access to 24 track analog and you're just like, yeah, whatever, dude. But now it's like, oh my God, look at that stuff. So I'm pretty happy and healthy, and I'm very glad to meet you. What a pleasure.
Thank you. Now, this album, was this inspired by a trip to Japan?
Yeah, my wife decided that she was going to take the kids. The kids have their birthdays are only a week apart, not by plan, and of course they don't enjoy that very much. So she's like, let's have their birthdays in Japan. Let's go there. And I hadn't been there since working there professionally and touring and stuff. And she'd never been, and of course the children hadn't been. I'm like, absolutely, honey, you want to do that? Let's do that. So she put it all together because she's that kind of woman. And we went there for a couple of weeks, and in our conversations, she suggested that I make some music around it, knowing that I work in ambient. I like that particular medium a lot. I listen to a lot of ambient music, and so I made field recordings, and then came home, and you take all your field recordings and you distill them all down from this giant pot to like a couple of tiny little things, and then I started to make pieces of music surrounding them, not necessarily because of them or like an outgrowth of those sounds, but sort of like inspired by them. It was really a gas. It was, how sometimes you feel like the music plays itself, and that's what it felt like. It's like, this is, I don't know if I'm doing this or who's doing this, but it's really fun.
Well, being a spiritual person myself, I could take this album, put it on, and do my meditation.
Wow.
It's very, I don't know how to describe it other than it's very calming.
That's great.
And even with you have some talking going on. I think there's a radio show and I don't know, a tube station or something that you're at.
Yeah, the speaking you heard was AM radio. We actually drove. We rented a car and drove around Japan. I drove, actually. It was really fun. It's all left-hand drive, and totally backwards from us, and no problems at all. And everybody was really great. People obey the rules and drive carefully, and it was a gas. We did like over 1,000 miles, and at one point I was just like recording, like you're flipping through the stations, and I heard this one thing. I think I may have tried to get a translation of it. He was very absurdist, actually. I don't remember exactly what he said, but I wanted to make sure that what the person was saying that I was going to use as a recording wasn't something that would be inappropriate, or wasn't spreading the kind of message I would want to spread. Not that I want to spread a specific message, but it's got to be right on all levels. I guess that's the nature of artistic work. And it was absurdist. And so I realized, it doesn't matter, because it was kind of like, it was wacky. I should have been better at like remember exactly what he said, but it was nutty in a good way.
Speaking of translations, I can't even attempt to try to say the name of this album, but how do you say it, and what does it mean?
That's a good question. An old friend of mine that I worked with in the Mermen, is very versed in the record business from the 90s and early 2000s. And he had seen some of the copies of some of our mock-up ideas, and he made some suggestions. He goes, look, you were there. Why don't you use some kind of Japanese phrase for that? And I was like, that's brilliant. So I grabbed the phrase landscape of stories and then plugged it into the Google Translate, because that's what we do. Monogatari, Monogatari no Fukei. And I just liked how it kind of flowed. It doesn't really flow, but it's, you know, in Japanese it flows. I like the sound of it. I like the look of it. And it also told us it fit. I have to say that front cover image that my wife took of a beach in Fukuoka in Japan, it's on the West Coast, not far from Korea. That image reminded me starkly of the front cover image, just the Roger Dean drawing that he used for Tales. And of course, that album, you know, you either love it or hate it. You either like prog or you don't. That's kind of a litmus test of your progness, you know. So can you listen to Tales?
This is a step away from what you usually do, right?
Well, that's also a really great question. As a person who spent most of my life as a sideman, I never really had a usual thing, although the things that I spent the most time doing and gained the most credit for are instrumental rock. And that's really interesting because I grew up singing. I actually know how to sing, and I can do that. And my family was a very musical family, and we, my father sang second bass, and he was a very accomplished singer. So I guess it's no surprise how I picked up that. My voice is very high pitched, and his voice was very deep, and my sisters were in the middle, and we could do these very dense harmonies, and we could nail it. It's really fun. You know, like makes the hair on the back of your head back of your neck stand up. That was really cool. But yeah, I was in love with pop when I was young, like most youngsters who get into music in the West. And pop was heroin to me, you know, audio heroin. Pop is really weird because, you know, if you take 10,000 pop songs, let's say 10,000 well-known pop songs, really about, you know, less than 100 of them are going to be stunningly brilliant. The rest of them are going to be like stuff they threw at us because they thought it would work, and kind of does work because, you know, they're pros and I'm just listening. But it's like that 1 out of 1,000 or whatever that's so amazing. So I still love pop in that regard, and you'll still occasionally hear something that's like, wow, that's good. But I started to get really tired of music that was always, you know, trying to get my attention. And I started listening to a lot of ambient. And there's one in particular I can shout out to, Soma FM. A guy named Rusty Hodge runs it. And he's got a channel there called Drone Zone. And I'll let that play at home, just in the background. And I think it was the best description I heard of ambient music was a phrase by Brian Eno. I mean, we all know who he is. He said something about ambient music. What makes it good is that you can listen to it in the background, but it rewards closer listening. So it's not just what an old musical compatriot of mine, he came over to my house one day, he looks around, he goes, did somebody roll an SM57 into the refrigerator? And I was like, that's like the best description of shit ambient I've ever heard, you know. I'm just letting it go, you know. So I don't know, it's like all music, like all art, it's entirely subjective, but I listen to a lot of ambient, and I think the outgrowth of the album is from loving and listening and living in ambient land, which I have been for a long time. And that's probably also the extent of my skill set, to be honest. You know, I mean, I'm not a heavy duty pro. I see these people in the studio and how they work stuff, and I'm like, I'm just so impressed. It's so awesome. I wish I knew how to do that, but my skills are very simple. And so making that kind of music is definitely within my abilities, I think. Except that with this album, actually, I'm really pleased with it. I think this is probably, if I can say that, I think this is probably the thing that I've made that I'm the most pleased with of anything that I have ever made in terms of music. And it's inspiring me. I'm inspired by it.
Well, most ambient music is just like you say, it's in the background, but what you've put down is something that you want to get to know more. I mean, you're listening to it, and it's not just in the background. You're
So
interested.
draws you in, you could say.
Yeah, it really does.
That's fantastic. I'm so inspired, and I'm so pleased to hear that. You know, I've spent a long time making music, and to have people react positively to it, I feel like it's kind of like what you're going through making your podcast. You know, to be actually able to bring some positivity and to have it, to get the feedback from people that they're getting it, and they give that back to you. I had sent it to a friend of mine who I've known a long time. He works in internet stuff, internet technology. He goes, "Oh, all right, I haven't listened to it. Oh yeah, I listened to it last night while I was falling asleep, and I fell asleep really easily. It's really great." I'm like, "Perfect, great, I love it."
Do you take that as a compliment, or is that?
100%. I really do. I really do. And the truth is, actually, knowing what I know about ambient and my life with meditation and ambient and all that other stuff, it's like if you fall asleep to that, that's a compliment. I'll take that as a compliment.
It is relaxing, but like to me though, I don't know, maybe it's because I just love music so much. I love hearing the different sounds, the different the guitars and everything. And that's another thing. You're a bass man, but you're not hearing a lot of bass in this.
No, only one track really has bass guitar in it, and that was a strange choice. And you can hear that you've heard the track, and it was like, you know, I asked myself while I was doing it, why am I doing this? This is a little, I don't know if this works. And but then I let it stay, and I played it for my wife, and she's like, I love it. I'm like, okay, honey, it can stay. She's like my first sounding board, because she's seen a lot of shows too. But in general, it seems like, you know, layered acoustics will do a better job of drawing a person in and creating an environment, an audio environment. I love bass. I always have, and it seems to me like it's really cool if it's like its job is to supplement and enhance what's already happening in the mid range and the highs, right? And you would really only notice bass if it disappeared. At least I'm talking in a sort of a more popular musical format. But in this regard, those are like little solo bits. So I'm not sure if it was the right move when I was doing it, but now it's like it's done. So, you know, you let it go.
Do you have a specific formula on how you write a song?
That's another fantastic question. No, I just make it up as I go along. One thing I did pick up that was kind of interesting, when you get into droney bits, you know, and particularly for lower frequencies, it's really interesting sculpting lower frequencies to make them, first of all, not overpower the rest of the mix, and also so that they bolster it. So they're giving you that like gentle push up from the bottom without overpowering it. And I was making some audio for somebody who wanted specifically a meditation track. I was doing some, and I thought, why don't I just take, because it was singing bowls, that's what it was. And I took the frequency and I found the sine waves. There's a couple of places you can find them. And so I started taking sine waves and like getting a little bit of, as low as you can. You have to listen with a subwoofer, of course, and be careful of how loud it is. And you add a little saturation, add a little distortion, just a teeny little bit. And these sine waves, you know, if they sort of mate with the existing sound above them, the higher pitch sound, and if you get them just right, and then maybe add in like a Tara space pedal or something like that, it's kind of amazing, like what happens if the volumes are right. You know, it just kind of envelopes you and holds you gently, and it's a wonderful feeling. I really like that.
Well, in a way, it reminds me of like the Doors.
Wow.
Because when you listen to the Doors and you really listen, like if you got your headphones on and you're really listening and you hear the stuff that they add in the background, you know, I don't know if people realize there were songs that Jim Morrison not only sang, but he would also whisper the words in the background. If you listen real closely, you can hear them.
That's really, yeah. I know that the stories about their recording are legendary, that they would often do 50 takes of a song to get it to where their producer, I forget what his name was, he would agree that, okay, this is the take, this is right. And they were really painstaking about it. I mean, absolutely everything had to be spot perfect, just right.
Do you have a philosophy on music?
Oh, not really. I mean, music is, I mean, to my mind and heart, music is an essential part of aliveness. I mean, we have ears; they're one of our five senses, and we take in sensory information, and part of that information is definitely sound pressure levels, and that's music, that's audio. And there's a lot of science, and there's a lot of hoodoo as well behind different frequencies and how they interact with the human body and also with mental energy. I honestly believe, I can say that beliefs are useful if they help you. So if you listen to something and it's providing a particular effect for you that's pleasing to you, or if it's negative, then that's true for you. That's right. And that's what we'd call anecdotal evidence, right? Obviously, if the same thing's happening for everybody you play it to, then it's no longer anecdotal. But in this situation with music and music itself, we're not just talking about sound pressure levels and particular frequencies of sine waves. We're talking about music as an artistic expression covering the frequency spectrum. And it's intense stuff, and everybody feels differently about it. Some people just adore Whitesnake, What are you going to do? There it is. I mean, I love the production values. They're brilliant. I'd kill for those production values. But I guess the point I'm making is that I don't really have a philosophy other than if you like it, it's right. And so when you're mixing and creating, don't second guess yourself, blast forward, because this is, what was that thing from Seinfeld? It's just go time. It really is. It's subjective. It's completely subjective. So
what has been the greatest hurdle in your life?
Oh Lord, wow. Hurdle. I've been lucky in that in terms of my career, such as it is, I haven't given a lot of thought to the future. And so maybe that doesn't make me a very dependable, predictable kind of person, but it wasn't because I was trying to be a certain way. I just kind of was that way. And so I've always let the next thing grow out of the next thing, if you will. Or when you're in the present moment, you kind of get a sense of where the next thing is because you allow yourself to be in the present moment and you're not projecting too far ahead. I mean, I'm as guilty of anxiety-induced fear about the future as anybody, of course. But all my musical choices have pretty much been in the moment. And I look back on them and I'm like, I don't truly regret them, but I could have done things a little differently, but that's what happened. That's what brought me to where I am now. And that's, you can't have it any other way. So I don't really have an overarching philosophy that I can't think of. I suppose if I thought about it for a long time and got back to you in a couple of weeks or something like that. But then again, the instant answer that you give, the first thing that comes up to your mind is probably the right answer. Best not to overthink it.
All right. Two-part question.
All right.
What has been the greatest moment in your life and what's been the greatest highlight of your career?
Oh, wow. Such interesting questions. The musical highlight, I'll do that one first. The musical highlight is kind of twofold. It's what I just did over the past since we got back from Japan and creating this album. I feel deeply attached to it, and it's given me a boost that I was really needing. Because like everybody, I mean, we talked about Mike KENEALLY, former bandmate of mine and somebody that you've interviewed, and he talked, after COVID thing hit, everybody kind of just went, yeah, and I felt like I needed a boost, and this has been a really nice boost. Really a life-affirming kind of boost. And when I think of events, life-affirming is for me when I became a parent. I've got 3 kids now, and so every time it's equally life-affirming. So that's got to be the most deeply life-affirming, big deal. Musically, it would definitely be the album I just made, and then there's one other moment that I'll tell you, which is when I got the Satriani gig, and I just you know, I'm not too proud to say it. I fell out of my chair onto the floor, onto the rug, and I was yelling at the rug at the top of my fucking lungs. I was so happy. I was like, yeah, that was a wonderful moment. I'd worked really hard and long for it. I chased Joe around a long time for it. We knew each other peripherally through his new wave band prior to when he became a solo artist. He had a new wave band called the Squares, and we played in the same circuit. I played in bands, and he was in the Squares. And we were not friends; we were musical acquaintances. But you know, he's a very respectful person and always easy to talk to. And so we knew each other. And when he went solo, I chased him around on several different occasions over like years apart, trying to like get an audition. And I finally got it. I was just laughing, like, oh my God, it was worth the wait, you know.
What was it like working with Tiny Tim?
That was wild. We got offered the Mermen, the band that I was in the 90s that I co-founded with Jim, the guitar player. We were big fish in a small pond there, and you know, we got all the gigs. We opened for the Cramps, Nancy Sinatra. I mean, just everybody. Didn't matter. You know, any act that came through, everybody knew. Get the Mermen because they're easy. David Byrne, Jimmy Buffett, because they don't sing. They won't get in your way. They're perfect for an opener. And so it was like, you know, we're like the aperitif or whatever it is. That's the wrong word, the hors d'oeuvre. So they said, Tiny Tim's going to play at the Great American Music Hall. He needs a backup band. Do you guys want to be it? And I'm like, hell yes. And the drummer, God bless him, Martin, he's like, hell yes. And of course the guitar player, he's like, I can't play those songs. I'm like, oh, don't worry about it, dude. We'll figure something. So we got Lord, I feel bad. I've forgotten your name, Mr. Piano Player, and everybody knows you. And San Francisco piano player, very talented guy. You know, everybody knows you. You can play anything. The Great American Songbook doesn't matter. Very talented. Somehow somebody found him, and so we got together and we met at the show. We didn't even do a sound check. There was no rehearsal, no sound check, no nothing. We just walked out. The Mermen opened for him, which was fine, and then we opened. I had a Guild 4-string acoustic with flats on it. And the guy, I remember the sound man was like, okay, great. You got a pickup in that thing? And I did. And I was like, no, we'll have to use a microphone, because I knew that when I don't know where he's going, I'll just back away from the mic. And that way I won't be embarrassing myself and him too much. So I was like, phew, dodge that bullet. And so he got up on stage and people went batshit nuts. They went crazy. They were screaming. Not a big club, but they were screaming. It's Tiny Tim, Tiny Tim. And he just, you know, he walks up on stage. There we are standing there. He turns his head to the left, or was it the right? I forget. He goes, Maestro, the key of G, a 1, 2, 3, 4. And he just starts playing. And we're like, okay, here we go. And then we did the whole show. It was like, Jesus Christ, that was amazing. That was amazing. And when it was over, everybody went home, and he sat on the edge of the stage and signed autographs to everybody that wanted to sign an autograph until the club kicked everybody out. He sat there and waited. And then I was told that he was given a taxi ride back to his hotel room. It was his entire life.
Wow.
Yeah, wow is right. Wow. What did I just see?
If you remember, like the biggest event on television was when he got married.
I do, on Johnny Carson. I do. I don't know that we were allowed to see it because that happened when I was much younger. But yeah, I do remember the event. Yeah. He was a character. He was you know how sometimes you meet people that are larger than life, and yet you look deeper and the center, there's no like center there. There's more like this interesting like shock wave of being that exists on the outside, but there's nothing for you on the inside. I don't know that's probably not exactly accurate. But he had a part to play, and he played it perfectly. Oh my God. Wow, that was a wild experience. Thank you for reminding me of that.
I read that in your biography, and I was like, I've got to ask him, because I just trying to.
And then and you better be telling the truth. It is. It's an amazing story. It's all, you know, it's one of those things you'll always remember, you know, because it's just so weird.
What do you like to do outside of music?
I like to read. I love the mountains. We're here in outside of New York, and just outside of the city. And So we don't have any mountains here, but when we lived in California, and I spent a lot of time in the Sierra, and my body won't allow me to do it anymore, but I spent a lot of time backpacking and hiking in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and that's just an incredible place. But I do logistics and back up and take care of my family because they're all out doing their thing, which makes me lucky. I'm like house husband, or what did somebody say, Mr. Mom, right? And I love to read. I read all the time, and in the mountains and making music. I guess I'm pretty lucky. It sounds like I'm pretty lucky.
Outside of the Tiny Tim story, what's been the wildest thing that's ever happened to you playing music?
Oh boy. Okay, well, the most salacious thing was I played in a lot of top 40 bands and coming up. What a great, I don't think there's any better way to learn how to be an ensemble musician than to work. And I worked for years. I was in a 6-piece uniform show band that did only disco stuff at the Jersey Shore, coming out of my teens. Rock of the 80s, just in the beginning of the MTV era. I played in a band that did that playlist, that set list. You know, you're wearing your Capezio pants, you know. And in that particular band, we were in Alaska for 4 months, going around all these different places. And one place in particular that we went to was in the suburban town of Anchorage called Wasilla, and just north, I think, of Anchorage, northeast, I'm thinking. And back then it was 1984, as a matter of fact. And what's her name? Sarah Palin was, I think, some kind of politician for Wasilla at that time. Or no, she's from there. That's what it was. Yeah, she's from there. And so we're playing and doing that thing. We're at a place called Hoopy's Roadhouse, and it was awesome. And they had a thing in front of the stage where the band's playing, you know, 6 nights a week, 6 nights, 6 sets a night usually. And it's about this wide. So it's wide enough that you could sit on it or stand on it. It's the railing in front of the band, and it only comes up to about your waist. And so we're playing the last song of the night. I think it was White Wedding, Billy Idol. Everybody's going nuts. The dance floor is packed. And I was standing there just right up to the railing, and one of the dancers comes up, a young woman, and she just lays down, or no, I laid down. That's right. I laid down on the railing. And the next thing I know, I feel my pants being opened. And I was like, okay, this is probably not going to be a cool thing to do, but it is pretty funny. And at that moment, I turned my head to the left to look at my drummer, and he was playing with a look on his face like I've never, like, his mouth was down on his snare. And so I had to get up really, because you can't, it's not okay. But at the same time, it's like, that's pretty nuts. So I survived that. Hopefully she did too. I mean, that's, you know, those were different back then. But there's some, you know, there were fights, there was blood, there's, you know, mobster after hours clubs. There's people trying to, like, you know, take money from you, and you find a way to work around them, and, you know, people trying to pull fast ones on you. And it's an adventure, and it's a really great way to either get your ass handed to you or to grow up. And I feel lucky as hell that I was able to navigate a lot of those crazy things.
How many different artists have you worked with?
A lot. Most of the people that you'll see that I'll talk about, like, for instance, Steve Lukather, John Petrucci from Dream Theater, Steve Vai, they're all in the context of working with Joe Satriani. Because when it comes to Joe, it's like, you know, we opened for Metallica one time in Ottawa, and because he used to teach Kirk Hammett when they were both very much younger, the whole band troops in to see us, to see Joe, obviously not me. And but they're all like, it's Joe, you know, they're coming to pay respect because everybody does, and they should, because it's appropriate. It's definitely the right move. There's no sense of people trying to, like, you know, be seen with somebody because it's cool. It's like, no, man, thank you, good to see you. You know, a pleasure. So there's something real there that's really cool. So most of the people that I played with in that big rock realm, Sammy Hagar and Tony McAlpine and DWEEZIL Zappa, is in the context of playing with Joe, because he plays live all the time and is really generous with his time. And I'm glad that I played with all those people, because they're really fun, really fun. I got into a hair flipping session with John Petrucci at one point. We're like, yeah, let's not do that anymore. Like, okay, yeah, let's not do that. But I played with a lot of interesting people in my top 40 days. I mean, I played with the Ink Spots, similar situation to Tiny Tim, where they're coming through, they need a backup band. They just need, just need the rhythm section. And my God, I mean, what things you learn from doing stuff like that. You're just thrown in, you're thrown in, you got to fake it. So that was really cool. Yeah, and bands, I've played in many, many different kinds of bands, but I never learned how to read, sadly. And I regret that a little bit, but I have a highly trained ear.
I know a lot of musicians that are that way, though.
It's true. It's easier to, well, I don't know if it's easier now. Certainly in the mid 20th century, you had to read. If you were going to work in big bands and stuff, because the arranger's always coming up with a new thing. Okay, we're going to do this. Here's popping it down. I want you to see this. And I guess it depended too on how well funded they were, because who had time and effort to buy paper and pens? I guess a lot of time they're just like, horn section, I want you to drop a sixth and swing in this B part. They're like, okay, fine, great, we'll do that. And they would rehearse.
Did I read correctly that this album is only going to be released on digital download?
Yes, although there's always a possibility that at a future date, because I love vinyl and I even like cassettes. They're so damn goofy, but I love vinyl. Who doesn't? How can you not? I would love to do a vinyl release, but that's not in the offing right now. That wouldn't be, not yet. Maybe the next
one. Are you planning on making another album soon?
Absolutely. I'm working on a couple different things. I'm not sure which direction I'm going to take. I collaborate with people, and there's a singer-songwriter in Brooklyn that I've been collaborating with that I used to collaborate with back in the Bay Area and in Northern California. And there's another couple of guys in the Central Valley of California who do this crazy ambient stuff. It's a little twisted, which I kind of like. And so, and they're deeply schooled in that whole realm. And so we've been trading stuff back and forth. And we're going to put that stuff out too. That's called what is that called? That's called Opaque. And then there's a fellow that I collaborated with. I found him on Reddit, or he found me, or we found each other, and he just needed some vocals. So I sang a whole bunch of parts for him and mixed them all together. And he just published them recently. What's he called? 13 Days of Rain, I think he is. Is that right? Yeah, he just published. And there's some other folks that I've been collaborating with, and I've been working on more stuff in an ambient style. And then also you always love creating pop rock because it's just so much fun. I don't think, I have a drum set, an actual real drum set, which is not a very good one, but I like playing the drums, and I know I'm not the best. And the more I play, the worse I know I am, because wow, you look at a really good drummer, it's like, oh my God, how the hell do you do that? Like I have to say, since we're talking, in the whole time that I played with Joe, his drummer was Jeff Campitelli, who he's played with for a long time. And he's played with everybody because he can play with anybody. But Jeff has been his longest standing drummer and was his drummer in his new wave band, the Squares. And the moment that I first played with Jeff in the context of playing with Joe, it's just like when you're with a drummer like that just elevates everything. Holy shit. There's just nothing like it. It's just incredible. You're being elevated, you're being buoyed up. And also I've been able to play with some very technical drummers too, but Jeff swings. And so when you've got somebody who rocks but swings, it's just, it's a heartbeat. It's a wonderful thing. Why did I get onto that? I don't remember. Oh, because I play drums bad. That's right. And it's really fun. Playing the drums is a gas. I know I suck. Okay.
Well, do you have a website?
I do. It's a Bandcamp site right now. Squeaky Studios. I decided to use that instead of my name. And my wife is yelling at me about this. You got to use your name. How else is anybody gonna know who you are? So it's squeakystudios.bandcamp.com. And of course, like all idiot musicians, I've introduced a level of complexity into it that's absolutely not necessary. But squeaky spelled correctly was not available. So I just put an extra E in there in squeaky before the Y, which is like, great, Alan, that's very helpful. People are really going to have an easy time finding your shit, like nice. So anyway, squeaky spelled incorrectly, Squeaky Studios in bandcamp.com. And that's been really fun. I've been really experimenting with all kinds of different genres and doing fun stuff. But I'm definitely going to keep doing it now that there's, when you said what you said, it's just like, I'm going to keep doing this.
I inspired you to keep going.
Yes, sir.
And what about social media?
Oh, not really. Instagram, we do have that. Again, I thank my wife for being so aggressive about this. Like, dude, if you're going to do this, do it. I'm like, okay, she's right. So what do we got there? Squeaks more. Squeak S more. I mean, come on, I can probably do better. I'm a terrible marketer, I guess.
Well, I'm going to put all the links in the description so people can find you pretty easily.
I appreciate that.
Alan, man, this has been so awesome having you on. It's really been a blessing.
Time for me, and thank you also for obviously what you do is you support independent artists, and you really have a feel for what you love, and you're passionate about it. I respect that. Thank you for that.
Again, thank you. And I also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, well, I hope you'll come back. Hit that subscribe button. From our regulars, you guys rock because you make it possible for me to do this. Until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.